And I wanted to read something from Lama Yeshe's book called Introduction to Tantra, which I highly recommend if you want to understand Tantra better. Because Lama Yeshe had a really wonderful way of explaining things without going into all the technical, philosophical details that make it really complicated, but just really going to the heart of it, the essence of it, and making it very practical and easy to relate to, like our lives. So in this book, there's a chapter about yeah, it's about seeing yourself as a deity. Prior to this, he was talking about desire. That's one of the points I sort of skipped over, that within Tantra, one of the features of Tantra is said to be that instead of like, oh, we have to get rid of our desire and our emotions and so on, and we actually use them in the path. It's possible to transform the energy of our disturbing emotions, mainly desire. It's mainly talking about desire, and bring that into the path. He's talking about how in many religions, desire is seen as something bad. You know, we shouldn't enjoy ourselves. We shouldn't have pleasure. And we may be afraid of pleasure and feel guilty when we have pleasure. So that's an aspect of some religions. And he said in Tantra, there's no need to feel that way. We can actually utilize desire. Of course, it's not easy to do. You have to be quite advanced on the path to be able to do it. But at least the possibility is there. The technique is there for utilizing and transforming desire. So he says here, the energy of desire can affect us in two completely opposite ways. Through the transformative methods of Tantra, this energy can be transmuted into light, blissful wisdom, and thus become a potent force in our development. Ordinarily, however, this desirous energy feeds into habitual patterns of grasping and attachment, which only decrease our awareness while reinforcing our ignorance and dissatisfaction. So you're saying that, you know, what normally happens when people have desire is that they just kind of get caught up in it and follow it, and it just leads to dissatisfaction, more suffering rather than out of suffering, and it just perpetuates this old habit of attachment and grasping and so on. So that's the usual route, but Tantra has a different route for using desire and using it in development of wisdom. That's how it's used. One of the major tasks facing the spiritual seeker is to identify as precisely as possible the factors responsible for perpetuating this cycle of dissatisfaction, and then to apply the most appropriate antidote to their destructiveness. Only then can best use be made of Tantra's transformative powers. So in other words, we have to understand what factors within ourselves, within our minds, keep us trapped in samsara, and use methods for overcoming those or transforming those, transmuting those, and so on. According to Buddhist Tantra, we remain trapped within a circle of dissatisfaction because our view of reality is narrow and suffocating. We hold on to a very limited and limiting view of who we are and what we can become, with the result that our self-image remains oppressively low and negative, and we feel quite inadequate and hopeless. Does that sound familiar? As long as our opinion of ourselves is so miserable, our life will remain meaningless. Many people feel that humans are little more than monkeys, and that the human mind is nothing but a series of chemical reactions and electrical impulses in the brain. Such a view reduces us to lumps of matter and dismisses any notion of a higher dimension to human existence. It's true, isn't it? This is what many people in the world believe. There's no consciousness, there's just body and brain, and our thoughts are produced by our brain, and once we die it all disappears, and nothing higher, nothing more, nothing beyond that. Well, this is not the Buddhist view. Tantra challenges this unreasonably low opinion of human potential by showing us how to view ourselves and all others as transcendently beautiful, as gods and goddesses, in fact. One of the essential practices at all levels of Tantra is to dissolve our ordinary conceptions of ourselves, and then from the empty space into which these concepts have disappeared, arise in the glorious light body of a deity, a manifestation of the essential clarity of our deepest being. The more we train to see ourselves as such a meditational deity, the less bound we will feel by life's ordinary disappointments and frustrations. This divine self-visualization empowers us to take control of our life and create for ourselves a pure environment in which our deepest nature can be expressed. Because when you do tantric practice, not only do you see yourself as a deity, but you also see others as deities, and you see the environment around you as a pure land. So you're transforming everything. Because they say in Tantra that the main obstacle or the main problem we have to overcome is twofold: ordinary appearance and ordinary grasping. Ordinary appearance means seeing ourselves as just an ordinary dumb human being, seeing others as ordinary dumb human beings, seeing the world as just this ordinary horrible place. So that's the ordinary appearance, just the ordinary view we have of ourselves and others in the world as just ordinary and limited and faulty and all, like that, very depressing. So that's ordinary appearance. And then ordinary grasping is the tendency to believe that's how things are. I'm like that, others are like that, the world is like that, that's just how everything is. So believing in that, grasping at that. So this tendency to see things as ordinary and believe in them as ordinary, this is what keeps us stuck in samsara. So deity yoga is a direct antidote to that. Seeing ourselves as a Buddha, a deity, seeing others as deity, seeing the world as the environment of a deity. Because they say when you become a Buddha, when your mind becomes a Buddha's mind, everything looks different. You don't see things as the same. Everything looks beautiful and pure. And that doesn't mean you're blind. You would still see, there's problems. There's a war in Syria, okay? It's not that you are in denial about that. You do see that, but you see more than that. You see that all these people who are involved in the war, fighting each other, killing each other, they have the potential to reach enlightenment. This isn't who they really are. This isn't how they really are. They're just ignorant. They don't know their real nature. Okay, so that's why they're caught up in greed and hatred and ignorance and fighting and so on. But you see, there's more than that. They have the potential to become enlightened too. So you see everything is very different. So when we're practicing Tantra, we're pretending we're already there. We're already in an enlightened state, seeing others as enlightened beings, seeing the world as a pure land. And then he says, Tantric meditational deity should not be confused with what different mythologies and religions might mean when they speak of gods and goddesses, like Hindu gods or Greek gods or Roman gods. It's not like that. Here, the deity we choose to identify with represents the essential qualities of the fully awakened experience latent within us. To use the language of psychology, such a deity is an archetype of our own deepest nature, our most profound level of consciousness. So the deity, is our own pure nature, our positive qualities, already fully developed and fully manifested. That's the real meaning of a deity. It's our own potential rather than some external god or goddess. So I thought that could be helpful, because I think within Judaism there's this concern about idol worship, right? I think that's, to not worship gods and goddesses, idols and so on. So that idea could be a kind of obstacle to tantric practice and dealing with these different deities. So if you think that, they're not like ordinary gods and goddesses worshipped by different religions, but they are manifestations of or representations of our pure nature, our own deepest pure nature and qualities. In Tantra, we focus our attention upon such an archetypal image and identify with it in order to arouse the deepest, most profound aspects of our being and bring them into our present reality. So instead of thinking, enlightenment is way off in the future, I'm never going to get there, kind of thing. We make it now, we bring it into the present as if it's already there. We're pretending that we are already a Buddha. And how would a Buddha think? How would a Buddha feel? How would a Buddha behave with others and see others and so on? It is a simple truth that if we identify ourselves as being fundamentally pure, strong, and capable, we will actually develop these qualities. But if we continue to think of ourselves as dull and foolish, that is what we will become. Right? So how we think, who I am, how I am, what I am, will make us this or that. To give an example of tantric transformation, we might visualize ourselves as Manjushri. There's Manjushri here. A princely deity usually represented as reddish yellow in color, holding the sword of discriminating awareness in his right hand and a text of Buddha's perfection of wisdom teachings in his left. So the sword isn't to chop people's heads off, it's the sword of wisdom that cuts through ignorance and delusions. And we can do this whether we are man or woman, since tantric visualizations completely transcend our ordinary identification as male or female. So, before visualizing ourselves as a deity, we dissolve into emptiness. So that should include, letting go of our usual identity as a male or a female. So those aren't who we really are. So then we can arise as a male or a female. Doesn't matter. But such a visualized image is not, in fact, the actual Manjushri. Wisdom itself, the completely unobscured insight of a mind that has realized its full potential, is the actual Manjushri. So the real Manjushri isn't this figure. It's wisdom, that mind that realizes the true nature of everything, itself and everything else. That's the real Manjushri. And the purpose of seeing ourselves in the form of this particular deity is to hasten the development of the wisdom already within us. Manjushri's double-edged sword, for example, symbolizes the ability of enlightened wisdom to discriminate between what is true and what is false by cutting through misconceptions and superstitions. The more closely we identify with such a deity, having become familiar with what each of his attributes stands for, the more deeply we stimulate in our own mind the growth of the qualities he represents. Okay, so when you're visualizing yourself as Manjushri, you're aware of what the symbolism is, what the sword is about, what the text is about, what Manjushri is about. So that helps the growth of your wisdom. We have the potential in our own mind of having this wisdom, so we're sort of nurturing that potential so it can come out and grow and become real. In the early stages of practice, this process of seeing oneself as a deity is largely artificial. But as we train in deity yoga with the proper perseverance, we will be able to perceive this self-generated deity with a clarity far exceeding that of our present self-image. Our mind will actually become the mind of the deity, and our ordinary sensory experiences, what we see, hear, taste, and so forth, will be transformed into the blissful enjoyments of the deity. This is not a fairy tale. Such transformation has been the experience of countless tantric meditators of the past, and there is no reason why, if we exert sufficient effort, we should not experience the same transcendental results. So that's a nice explanation. And then he goes on to talk about problems, difficulties that we may have with this kind of practice. Somebody might ask, but why should I emanate myself as Manjushri or any other deity? It's already difficult enough for me to emanate myself as a man or a woman. Why should I change my appearance and put on another mask, a Manjushri mask? I wonder if somebody actually asked this question of Lama Yeshe there. You know, some Westerner. But I think it's valid. I mean, many people have difficulty just managing their life as it is, you know. Just being what they're supposed to be, you know, a husband, a wife, a mother, a father, the job, and so on. Just handling our ordinary life, fulfilling our responsibilities, doing as good a job as we can with what we're supposed to do. That's already hard enough. And then to add on this, you know, oh, I'm supposed to see myself as this deity? Okay, so what he says is, what we have to remember is that when we emanate ourselves as Manjushri, it is not to manifest as something different from what we already are. So we shouldn't think, this isn't me. We already have the profound qualities of such a divine manifestation within us at the moment. We have wisdom. We have wisdom. And we're trying to get in touch with, tap into our wisdom, make it manifest, make it grow, make it develop, and eventually become enlightened wisdom. Yeah.
My question is, why we should, oh no, I'm going to make the question in another form. If it's possible, because Manjushri is representing the wisdom.
Is what?
Representing wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I, for example, visualize something different? Okay, that for me is wisdom. For me, wisdom is something different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's maybe a light. Okay, is a strong feeling. Okay, but for me it's difficult to visualize it with this figure. So I am asking you if it's possible for me to visualize what is for me wisdom.
Yeah. I mean, you can do whatever you want. I was just thinking about, sometimes Lama Yeshe would lead a meditation and he would ask people, he would say, okay, you can visualize the Buddha, but if you prefer, you can visualize Jesus. If you have more connection with Jesus, you can visualize a candle. Okay, so you don't have to visualize these images from the Buddhist tradition, from the Tibetan tradition. So he really made it open. So of course, if you feel more connected with some other image, that represents wisdom, fine, you can do that. But the thing is, this kind of practice comes from a long tradition, going back to Shakyamuni Buddha. More than 2,500 years people have been doing this kind of practice. And so it does have that kind of validity. And so, some people may feel, well, rather than just inventing something myself, some new thing that, I like to do, I prefer to go with this this tradition, which has been practiced for thousands of years and has worked for people for thousands of years. So some people may feel that way. But if you feel more comfortable doing some other kind of visualization, some other kind of image, that's fine. And see what happens. I tend to be, maybe I'm kind of conservative, but I tend to feel, well, so many great masters of the past have done this practice, have visualized this deity and achieved results, good results, benefits from it. So I feel more safe to follow that rather than just whatever pops up into my mind, because I'm not sure what kind of result that will bring. So that's my feeling. But everyone's different, so if you prefer some other image that speaks to you, then go ahead and try that. Also, I remember when I was first getting involved with Tibetan Buddhism, I had some difficulty with some of the images, especially if they're different colors, like green. Why does she have to be green? Why can't she be And many arms. I remember actually one time I was doing a Nyungne. Nyungne is a practice with Avalokiteshvara, thousand-armed Chenrezig. So at one point I was, looking at the, image, the painting of Avalokiteshvara, and think, why do you have to look like that? All those arms, all those faces, that's like a monster. Like in our culture, we have these stories of monsters who have many heads and many arms, and they're sort of, nasty and mean and so on. So I remember thinking, why can't you just look normal? So I had a hard time with that. But then at one point, I did a 3-month retreat. Lama Zopa Rinpoche asked me. And I did this 3-month retreat of Avalokiteshvara. And I got more, just spending that much time, several times a day, visualizing Avalokiteshvara and just contemplating it. And I came to just love Avalokiteshvara. I didn't mind all the arms and all the faces and, I didn't care. I kind of got beyond that and just saw something else. So, sometimes initially in the beginning we might have some resistance, some discomfort and so on. But if we look at that and work with that, we might get beyond it, and we might find that, I really like this image the way it is. I don't need to change it. So I'm just saying that as a possibility, that sometimes it just takes time to get familiar and comfortable with some of these images. And also Tara, I don't mind that she's green. I like green, actually. It's a beautiful color. Mother Nature, green trees, green grass. It's a beautiful color. But initially it was like, green? Again, we have the Jolly Green Giant. Or Shrek. Incredible Hulk. So, so sometimes there might be these things we need to work through in our mind to get comfortable. But I've become quite comfortable with many of these deities that I had difficulty with before. So where was I?
One question, please. Is Tonglen a form of the tantric practice?
No. You can practice Tonglen within Tantra, but no, it's in Sutrayana. So, yeah.
It's not deity yoga.
Huh?
It's not deity yoga.
Yeah, but while you're doing your sadhana, you could do Tonglen. There's nothing wrong with doing that. You can incorporate all kinds of other practices. Because, yeah, when you're on the tantric path, you do have to practice all 6 perfections. So Tonglen is a practice of giving, first perfection, and taking on the suffering of others to enhance our compassion. So there's nothing wrong with incorporating it into tantric practice. So where was I? We already have the profound qualities of such a divine manifestation within us at the moment. The reason we practice emanating ourselves as a deity is so that we can more fully recognize and cultivate these qualities rather than remaining miserably trapped within the limiting projections of the self-pitying attitude. I am ugly, stupid, weak, and worthless. Yeah. So it's to transform our self-image, our view of ourselves, getting beyond our limitations. Anyway, that's just some... There's more, but maybe that's as much as I can read for now. Well, here's something interesting. Although deity yoga might seem very unfamiliar and impractical at first, we can get a glimpse of how effective it is by thinking of similar techniques that have already demonstrated their value even to the skeptical West. For instance, there are many documented cases where people have cured themselves of cancer and other serious illnesses solely through the process of creative visualization. Instead of holding on to the view, my body is filled with cancer and I am dying, these people see themselves as whole and healthy. The image of being diseased is released from the mind and replaced by an image of radiance and vitality. On many occasions, this approach has proven effective, even after doctors have given up all hope. I remember in the past hearing about this practice where people would visualize these little things inside their body eating the cancer cells. Yeah, and that it actually was effective. It did help. I don't know if that's still being taught. Is that still being used? Has anyone heard? Anyway.
Yes, but it doesn't work on everybody.
Doesn't work on everybody.
That's true. But the percentage of success yes, it's very low. Anyway, it's good to do it because there is no danger. Maximum it doesn't work.
Yeah.
For sure it works. If it's true spiritual practice, it works. Maybe not next month, maybe not next year, maybe not this life, but it works.
Yeah, and also other practices utilize visualization. For example, Tonglen. When we do Tonglen practice, we do visualization. We imagine the suffering of others coming to us and then dissolving and disappearing, and our ego and selfishness disappearing. And we imagine sending out our good energy, and it becomes what helps other sentient beings. So there's lots of practices just in the Sutrayana system of using visualization. It can be very powerful. More effective than just thinking, just intellectual thinking. And when we do like equanimity, I think we maybe haven't done that. Equanimity meditation, where you visualize a friend and an enemy and a stranger, and then you sort of try to work on your attitudes towards them. So it's quite powerful to use visualization.
So many practices, what to do eventually, and how frequent. So many different practices.
Yeah.
For how long? When do you it's. I get introduced to a new practice every few months, and I'm like, what now?
Yeah, I sympathize with that.
How long do you practice something? how long do you practice a certain one, stick with one, and sort of like, and why would you let go of it to practice a different one also? So it's also that kind of, and when you practice, I would say, daily yoga, do you quit doing anapanasati or like shamatha or metta or so?
Yeah, how do you put them all together? Well, I mean, we do have this system we call the Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment, which contains all the most important meditations and practices we need to make our way to enlightenment. It's a kind of step-by-step thing. And I don't know, I find it really helpful. I think many people find it helpful as well, because it sort of provides a roadmap, like a map from here to enlightenment. These are the things you have to do. But it's not that you only do each practice only once and then you move it on to the next one, or you do it even 10 times and then move on to the next one. But we have to do all of them. We need all of them. We need to do all of them again and again. So they say there's different ways you could do it depending on your circumstances. If you're in a retreat, it's really good in a retreat, because there you could do a number of sessions every day and you could go through the whole Lamrim. Maybe within 3 days, you could do all the main topics of the Lamrim and then start again. So you go through a cycle, and in that way your mind gets more and more familiar with all the topics. Or you could spend, 3 days on one topic, really meditate on one topic and get really familiar with that, and then move on to the next one. So we do need many different kinds of practices. It's not enough to do only one practice, like anapanasati, and go all the way to enlightenment. That's not possible. I think of it as like diet, Our body needs different kinds of nutrients. If we only eat one kind of food, if you only eat lettuce, for example, 3 times a day, that's the only food. Or you only eat carrots and then you become like Manjushri. So we need different kinds of foods to, provide our body with all the different nutrients. So it's similar with our mind. Our mind, to develop our mind fully, to develop all the potential, all the qualities of the mind, we do need different kinds of practices. So then it's just a question, like you say, when and how much. But that depends on circumstances. So if you have just one session a day and the rest of the time you're busy doing other things, then, you could do the same practice every day for a while, get really familiar with that. And then later, start doing another practice to get familiar with that. So there's different ways. In fact, related to that question, I once heard a Lama who'd been living in London for many years and knew how busy people's lives can be. He said that if you have just one session a day of practice, his recommendation was divide the amount of time in half, and the first half do meditation on the breath, like anapanasati. Just watch your breath, try to stay focused on the breath. And while you're doing that, you might notice there's something in your mind that needs working on. Like there could be some depression or some anger, you're angry at somebody or you're worried about something. So there might be some kind of problem that's bothering your mind. And then he said, so then the second half of your session, do a meditation related to that. So if it's anger, you could meditate on patience or loving kindness. If it's anxiety, you could do something else to deal with that. And he said if there isn't any problem, nothing bothering your mind, then you can spend the second half doing whatever you want. You could continue doing anapanasati, or you could do Tara practice, or you could do whatever, meditation on emptiness. But I thought that's a really good advice, because there are problems that happen in our daily life. And if we just try to shove those aside, not look at them and not deal with them, they don't go away. They're still there. They're still kind of bothering our mind. And And then there's a separation between your meditation practice and the rest of your life. Okay, I'm just going to sit and meditate and forget about everything else. But that problem is still there in your mind and in your life. If you're having a problem with another person and you're not dealing with it, every time you see that person, you just want to go the opposite direction. You're feeling negative feelings towards that person. So that's not right. We should be using our meditation practice to deal with what's really going on in our life. If there is some kind of problem, we should look at it and work on it and deal with it. So I thought that's a really, really good advice. It's like your meditation practice relating to what's happening in your life. And at the same time, you are increasing your familiarity with the practices. So, because sometimes the way the practices are taught, they're like for a yogi. Somebody who's in Tibet and has all the time in the world, they can meditate 20 hours a day and they can do this and that and so on and so forth. But, not many people are like that. Not many people have that kind of lifestyle. So, we in the West have to make adjustments according to our lifestyle and our needs and so on and so forth. Okay, I was thinking that maybe that's enough material to go through today. We pretty much covered letter D, although we did skip, I have to say, we did skip one point, number 2. Using delusions, especially desire, in the path. So I did mention that a little bit before I started reading from Lama Yeshe. And it's a little hard to understand this and even harder to practice it. But the idea is, as Lama Yeshe was saying, desire isn't in itself a bad thing. None of the delusions are bad in themselves. It just depends on how we manage them, how we deal with them when they arise. So if they arise and we don't know how to deal with them wisely and we just go down the road of being angry or having desire, then we're just creating more samsara, more suffering, more problems. But if these emotions arise and you utilize them, even in sutra, if you think, okay, there's anger in my mind, I want to work on it, I want to look at it, try to transform it, try to stop being angry at that person and instead have more patience and more compassion. So that's an example of using a disturbing emotion in the path. Instead of avoiding it, pretending it's not there, but working with it. You learn a lot, you grow a lot from that. But in Tantra there's other techniques for using emotions, although it's mainly desire. And the way it's done is again related to deity yoga. So within the practice of deity yoga, let's say you're visualizing yourself as Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig or Manjushri or whatever, and there's usually other deities around, and the mandala, the very beautiful celestial mansion, so this whole visualization. So while doing this practice, it's possible desire could arise. Yeah? Feeling of desire, for example, looking at another deity, a beautiful deity, and ooh, she's nice, or he's nice, or whatever. So desire could arise in the process of this visualization, because you're visualizing these exquisitely beautiful bodies, okay? They're made of light, but still it could stir up desire. So when that happens, if that happens, what you're supposed to do is, as soon as desire arises, recognize it, and then instead of going down the usual road of, getting caught up in it and increasing it and starting to have fantasies, you immediately remember emptiness. You should already have an understanding of emptiness. You remember emptiness, everything is empty, I'm empty, object is empty, everything is empty. Then your mind goes into emptiness, an understanding of emptiness. because desire carries with it a certain kind of blissful feeling, pleasant feeling, that carries over into the meditation on emptiness and enables you to stay longer absorbed into this meditation on emptiness. And in that way, it enhances your emptiness. It enhances your experience of emptiness. So instead of like the usual path of desire, the samsaric path of desire, you're transforming it into a greater understanding, greater awareness of emptiness. It's hard to do this, but this is what tantric practitioners do. And so they use this analogy. They say that there's certain types of insects, probably like termites, that are born in wood, and then they eat the wood, right? They eat the wood. In a similar way, desire is born within your practice, but then you're using it in a way that eats desire, that destroys desire, overcomes desire by meditating on emptiness. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm just explaining it in a little short way, but that's the idea.
What about the termites?
Well, a termite, okay, let's say this is a wooden table or a wooden tree or whatever. So a termite is born inside, okay? The egg is there and it's born inside of the wood. And then while it's living in the wood, it's eating it, destroying it. It's destroying it, okay? So they say it's similar within Tantra. If desire arises, you utilize the desire in such a way that the desire itself gets eaten, gets destroyed, gets like the wood.
But the desire arises while practicing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you skillfully use the desire, turn the desire around with the understanding of emptiness in such a way that the desire gets dissolved or destroyed, overcome.
I thought that desire, like termites, when it arises in daily life, it appears in a good situation, like the wood. It is born in and then it destroys the good experience, because when we put desire into beneficial experience, it is like the termites eating the wood. That's what I had in my mind.
That's the ordinary situation of desire. There's a good experience, but then because of the desire, it destroys the good experience. Yeah, because we're dissatisfied, we want more, not content with what we have, we start doing things and saying things and just making a big mess. Huh?
And it reproduces itself as well, karma.
Increasing the desire. So, I mean, but no, it's the analogy is used in a different way. Destroying desire itself, that's the idea. We don't want to destroy our happiness, our good things, we want to destroy our desire, because that itself is destructive, that itself is problematic. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week. Same time, same place. Have a wonderful week.